Okay, let's take a look at our latest XW console. Then turn the video around. Left, right, up and down. Then take a look at our home level. So far, there are still no new menus. I always use the previous server to the extreme. Last video, we did how to use a small by 86 host. Deploy this backend open source service of SuperBAS. Then we will talk about it in this video. Deploy BTCServer on this x86 host. Let's talk about the prerequisites first. I want to create a website, or the SARS website. Allow users to log in. You can pay. He can choose to become a member. You can also choose to buy an ebook. It's free. Then I have selected SuperBase. Serve my backend. It can be perfectly integrated with the front end. Combine the front end to do Google login, GitHub login, and more than a dozen login methods such as email login. I don't have to learn about the backend. But there is one thing, because SuperBase, it is a chip that only supports AMD x86 architecture. So my Raspberry Pi is of little use here. Xiangchang faction is although its memory chip is sufficient. But I can only deploy it on a small x86 host. This is the same as the Raspberry Pi HomeLab. It has certain discrepancies, but that's okay. I suggest this. Say you can have 10, 20 Raspberry Pis, but you can put a cheap x86 small host by one as a backup. Anything high performance on your Raspberry Pi, it can't be achieved. In other words, it can only be compatible with x86 architecture. We'll just put it on this extra little host. If docked with an ARM, we put it all on a Raspberry Pi. Then Raspberry Pi can also do some hardware or other software-related things. Its ecology is better. That means a 5:1 or 10:1 ratio is the worst. You need to prepare this small host with x86. My little unit costs about $150 or 200美元, where is 8 gigabytes of memory. Then there is the 250 gigabytes disk size. Just enough for now. I finished deploying the system. Deploy makeup list. NTFI notification after deploying the chat server on this one. It has already used a 100 gigabytes disk on it. I have 130 gigabytes left. Because there is still 20 gigabytes, it is occupied by someone else. So after I deploy this acquisition of BAS, I'm going to reserve it for him. 20 gigabytes to 50 gigabytes disk size. That means I have 80 gigabytes of disk memory left. Don't worry. I only care about 3 on this little host right now. One is the local external deployment service. Basically, it doesn't take up memory or disk. The second is the deployment of the open source SuperBase, and it takes up about 4 gigabytes of this memory. And this disk size of 10 gigabytes to 50 gigabytes back up, so my 8 gigabytes memory has 4 gigabytes left. And there is still 80 gigabytes of disk size left. Then this is crucial. If you install BTCServer, you must ensure that your disk a disk size of 50 to 200 gigabits as much as possible, because it synchronizes the network nodes. There are certain requirements for the capacity of the disk. If it is the full amount, then you may have to prepare a T. If you use a frugal model, then you may have to prepare around 100 gigabytes to 200 gigabytes. And what I'm preparing now is that I have 120 gigabytes left. When I install my Bitcoin, after receiving my open source service, I have 110 gigabytes left. Total this afternoon. We walked together for 6 hours. It has consumed me 50 gigabytes. Let's take a look at the interface. First, let's take a look at this BTC. All of this GitHub, ABCD Siri, and its stars have 7.3 stars. It is poor G. Both BT and poor AI are recommended. It's completely open source and self-deployable. The scheme using the virtual currency Bitcoin. Let's take a look at its official introduction. And here it is on the left. QR code, and link provided for payment. That's it on the right. And this is the data page in the middle. On the right is the business, that is, we can click to pay. Return it after payment. If you return it, the payment will be successful. This is his entire business logic, and that's what I want. That's my website on the far left. Deploy this product or member. Then he pays. After payment, I will see the order and response of the data. Then the user pays. It is through this Bitcoin scan code. Then let's zoom in on my screenshot a little bit. Okay, this is after my deployment is successful. My open source service. We see this lower right corner. There is a Bitcoin node. In total, the saving mode I use costs 92. Node of G. Then I have now synced 45G. Took 6 hours. It will take about 10 hours. And his Lightning Network. Temporarily unavailable. This is what I said in my current state today. My Bitcoin balance. This is his panel. And this is the screenshot I took. This is a picture of the official website below it. We go back. So let's put it this way. If you want to deploy a completely free and open source ability to have a SaaS website for login and payment, user toolstation, then for me, I choose this front end to be viewed. Then the backend open source service of choice is Cobase. The selected payment service is Bits. The 3 paid servers. Then after the front end view is packaged, all he has is a static HTML code. Basically does not take up disk size and CPU memory, unless you have a lot of traffic. 1,000 or 1,000 people a day. If it is dozens or hundreds of people, you don't need to consider it. That's the first thing. The second point is, if you want to use server-based, then it is recommended that you have at least 4 GB of memory. Of course, 8 GB is the best. Then your disk-free space. At least 20 GB to 50 GB to make his log file, and some user table storage. And then if you use BitSearch, he has no requirements for this CPU and memory, but the disk requirements are very high because of the open source service you deployed. What's Bitcoin's income? He wants to synchronize this node of the entire Bitcoin. Then it will take about 900 GB so far, but I live in his bit now. With a streamlined model. That is, there is no need to synchronize all nodes. So, streamlined. He is dynamic. He also needs 50 to 100 gigabits, or around 200 gigabytes. It depends on how you configure it. But if you have less than 20 gigabytes, many services may not be available. So, my little host, it just so happens that he has 8 gigabytes of memory. Then there is 230 gigabytes of this disk space available. Remove systems and other services. He has about 120 gigabytes left. So my current configuration is okay. Talk about fast. It can reach 8 gigabytes of full memory at any time. But when it is not operating at high load, it usually only takes up 1 gigabyte or 2 gigabytes of free memory. So I only need the maximum memory to reach 8 gigabytes. Usually it only takes up 2 gigabytes of memory and does not affect. Then I have BTCPayServer left. It has no memory requirements, but I still have 120 gigabytes left. There are 100 gigabytes or 80 gigabytes of them, or 50 gigabytes to allocate to this Bitcoin node. The same amount of nodes used to make this payment. Then the remaining 20 gigabytes to 50 gigabytes of free space used to give SQL-based some disk space. File logging related to this service. That is to say, my little x86 host. 8 gigabytes of memory. Just enough static files for me to deploy the front end. Multiple deployments to my Debian base. Multiple deployments of my BTC server. Then its disk size is 120 gigabytes. This remaining space, just 80 gigabytes to deploy my Bit server. Then there's 50 gigabytes or so for my Zero base. So I suggest if you want to use these services on a small host, your memory starts at least 8G. Then your disk size is preferably 256 gigabytes. Least Is that you can build your little one like this. This killer website, but if more, I suggest you 16 gigabytes or a 500G, 16 gigabytes of memory, 500 gigabytes disk or 1 T disk. Used to do the whole service. Your service will be better this way. The above 3 services are all open source and free. As long as you have AI, a little technical, you can make your own login and pay for the website. I'll show you the effect later.